Hey everybody, welcome. It's Tony Zayas back with another episode of the Tech Founders Show. We got a couple more this year before we go on a little bit of a break, and then we'll be back in the new year. But with that, I wanted to introduce today's guest. We're going to be talking to Matt Gallant. He's the CEO and co-founder of TribeOS. And TribeOS helps advertisers and publishers run secure, ad fraud-free campaigns online. So with that, hey Matt, how you doing?
Good, Tony. It's great to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Great to have you here. So go ahead and, I read the brief descriptor, but tell us a little bit about TribeOS and what you guys are doing over there.
Yeah, I started building ad tech in 2013. It started off because we wanted accurate tracking. We were spending millions a year on digital ads, and Google Analytics wasn't cutting the cake. In my opinion, even back then, cookies were a problem. Of course, cookies have become a real big problem the last year or so. But even back then, we were losing like 15, 20% of the data. There was a lot of things that I wanted to do I couldn't do with Google Analytics. So the first thing we build is a platform called Gallant, which allows us to accurately track advertising. And when you're spending a lot of money on digital ads, you need great attribution. And there's a lot of things like what's your return on ad spend over time, and can you track cross domain sales? Just a lot of functionality that I really cared about. So started with that, and then about 2017 met my co-founder, business partner James Wallace, and he had been building ad fraud detection tools. So we decided to take that to the next level and combine that into a platform that allows advertisers to see ad fraud and eliminate it progressively over time. So it's a combination of the tracking and the ad fraud detection. So for most people are not aware, but ad fraud is the second most profitable crime in the world after drug trafficking. And it's probably advertising is probably the most corrupt industry in the world. Like, I think there's probably more honesty in drug trafficking than there is in advertising. I know that sounds crazy, but when we tested 10,000 different websites, the fraud level that we detected was 93%. So now that doesn't mean that it's 93% across the board. This was 10,000 different websites where you could buy display ads. I think, the big platforms like Google, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and so on, they've got real people. So there's a lot less fraud based on what we've seen. I'm not saying there isn't any, but as soon as you go outside of those websites, the fraud level is shocking. We did not expect things to be that bad. So
Just to share a little bit with our audience, how does the fraud manifest? Like, what's going on in these ad networks?
I'm a little cautious to share how it's done because it's so easy, but I'll share it anyways. Imagine you wanted to become a ad fraudster. It's as simple as using tools and technologies to build, let's say, thousands of websites, which is not that hard to do. There's a lot of tools, and with AI now, you can really crank the automation of ad site building pretty easily. You build those sites. The second thing you need to do is get bots. So some people can build bots. There's people that sell bots. So you either build or buy. You send the bots to your website, and that's pretty much it. At that point, you've got impressions, and then what they do is they plug into networks. So we tested 12 different. When we tested those 10,000 different sites, we tried 12 different networks. So we couldn't find a single network that wasn't epidemic levels of fraud. So again, these websites just plug in it, they sell their trash, they sell their fraud, and then these networks resell it. And again, the reason it's so corrupt and almost no one's talking about it is because no one's really tracking this. The tools, the technologies that have been built to track this there's some decent solutions that track some of it, but unless you're plugged in directly, like we were, there's a lot of fraud you can't see. So the short answer is no one really cares. They're making so much money from it, including the agencies, including the networks, of course, the website owners. So that's really the situation.
So where did you and your co-founder, where did you guys come up with this idea to solve this obviously large scale problem?
We just hate fraud. I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years. I think entrepreneurs are the people that make the world a better place. We create values that enhances people's lives, and it just drives me crazy, and it drives my co-founder crazy that entrepreneurs get robbed like that. At the end of the day, if you launch a business, if you have a new great product and you go on and spend money in advertising and you lose your shirt, a lot of people will stop advertising. They'll stop scaling. Again, I've spent well into the 8 figures on advertising. I've no doubt been robbed for 7 figures plus. So yeah, it's just a personal frustration, and it's something that I think if it was solved, advertising would be a lot more effective, and there'd be a lot more entrepreneurs bringing their thoughts into the world.
So was this a kind of an intentional move to, you knew this was something that you wanted to eventually get into and address?
Yeah, when we started building the tracking, I started learning about ad fraud back then. I had no idea how bad it was. I just knew that it existed. And part of the solution for the tracking was our thinking back then is if we have accurate tracking, at least we can stop advertising where we're losing money. We didn't have any ad fraud detection, but at least we could see, okay, here we're getting a positive return on ad spend, and there we're not. So we were advertising a lot on the Google Display Network, and we were able to at least eliminate websites that had poor performance. But the problem was you'd have to spend like $100 or $200 before you would know if the website performed. With our ad fraud detection, we could spend $2 or less, between $1.50 and $2, and know if the website was trash.
Wow.
So it was literally 100 times more efficient in terms of detecting if a website was good or not.
So how long has your solution been around now?
We started running. We went live beginning of 2020. So that's when we went live, and that's when we tested the 10,000 different websites, and we're shocked by the results.
So what did that, original product, what did that look like, and how has it since evolved and changed?
Well, yeah, we're still looking for honest publishers. The thing that I never thought would be the problem. So I'm going to shift a bit to biz dev mode. We have $125 million in signed letters of intent from advertisers. I've been in, again, advertising for a long time. So the demand from advertisers for this solution has been the easiest thing I've ever sold in my life by a long shot. However, the challenge, and it continues to be the challenge, is finding websites with real people. So we're continuing to look for that. We do have a SaaS product for the tracking solution. So that is a SaaS product. We have some customers for that product. But ultimately, we really want to bring this new level of transparency and honesty to advertising. So until, and we were being complicit in the crime was never an option. Obviously we could have done that and just sold trash to people. But until we find good, honest publishers that have legitimate human beings on their website, or a high percentage of it, we're not going to sell advertising. So currently we're continuing to test websites, and we're selling our SaaS product, which is the tracking.
Super interesting. How does your product figure out what sites are fraudulent? If you can dive into that a little bit,
Sure.
I'd love to unpack and hear kind of how it works.
Yeah, it's a multi-tiered approach. So the first thing we do is we preemptively score websites based on a bunch of variables. So just looking at the age of the website and a bunch of other things, we can more or less predict if there's a chance it's good or there's a high probability it's fraud. We also have human reviewers that'll look at the websites and usually can visually assess if there's a chance this is a legitimate website or there's very little chance. So right there, that's the first filtering. But on the fraud level, so fraud starts on the impression level. So just to break down how advertising works, the first tier is called the opportunity level. That's where all the impressions live. So you have all these opportunities to bid or not bid on an impression. We can eliminate about 25+% of fraud that we know based off their IPs. We have massive blacklist of IPs. So that's the first fraud tier. And it's about 25% of the opportunities right away. We know that the traffic's coming from data centers and from other blacklisted IPs. Once we decide to bid on an impression, then we can detect a whole new level of fraud because we're going to interact with that bot or that human being. And there's a lot of tricks that the bots will try to do. They'll generate, for an example, the impression on one server, and then magically the click happens on another server. Or there's changes on, there's a lot of things we can see on the impression level that when we're connected, we can see that. And that's a key point. We need to be connected to the network or connected to the website in order to detect that tier, that level of fraud. So that's the next level. And then the last level is post-click. So you generated you bought an impression or thousands of impressions. Usually you'll get a 0.1 to 1% click-through rate, meaning the bot or the human clicks the ads. And then once they click, we can monitor their behavior. So there's a lot of algorithms we've built that clearly identify unnatural behavior. I would say, to summarize the overall approach, it's constantly looking for unnatural behavior, whether it's how the website's built, whether it's obviously the IP or the potential opportunity on the impression or post-click. So that's how we detected the 93% on the 10,000 websites, because not any one of these approaches is perfect. Again, there's 25% on the first level. It's about a third on the second, and about a third on the third tier, which is the post-click fraud detection. So each tier identifies certain bad behavior, and that's how we score it.
Is there some sort of like machine learning going on?
Yeah, our CTO has a PhD in machine learning. So that's where, and to be frank, the bot behavior has not been that sophisticated where we've even needed to rely on that. If our solution would take hold, we do expect and project that the bot builders would start to build more sophisticated behavior to try to make it look more natural.
Yeah.
But currently, they've been very primitive.
I was going to ask about that because, we've talked like people in the cybersecurity space, and, the criminals typically, they get more sophisticated based on what's put in place.
Correct.
But it sounds like this is somewhat of a territory that's been left, kind of wide open for the people who are building bots and, running these fraud rings. So I was going to ask about the level of sophistication. Is there somewhat of a game of cat and mouse, or that's not there yet, but you guys are prepared for it?
Like I said, we've identified 93% of all impressions, opportunities, and clicks as fraud. The other 7% maybe was more sophisticated. Like we don't know how sophisticated the 7% was. We don't know exactly what percentage of that was human beings. So that's part of the challenge, And I think one of the things that is making this more difficult is that Apple, for an example, with all of the changes they've made in the name of privacy, which in my opinion, it's really in the name of selling their own advertising, which is nothing wrong with that. But the point is that as they obfuscate some of these elements, it makes it more difficult for us. They're hiding certain things. So yeah, that's part of the challenge. Again, for app, and that's a challenge for all advertisers that want to track things, as an example, right? But including Facebook. So, like I said, what we've seen so far, it's been unsophisticated, but I do expect that as ad fraud detection and awareness spreads, that they are going to get more sophisticated. It just makes sense. They're making so much money doing this that they're just going to keep creating solutions to work around the fraud detection.
Pretty crazy. So what does the competitive landscape look like with competing solutions and alternatives to what TribeOS offers?
Yeah, so our game plan was and is to build an advertising platform that, again, just outperforms other solutions, specifically in the display space. Meaning, again, Google, we're not going to be able to advertise on Google or Facebook or Instagram. Those are closed platforms. But as soon as you leave that, there's an incredible space and millions and millions of websites that sell advertising. So this was the first hybrid of fraud detection built in an advertising platform. There's a lot of advertising networks that you can go and buy, and we tested a dozen of them, and it was rotten to the core. So buyer beware. And then there are standalone ad fraud solutions. And what I can say is that unless that they're plugged in directly into the networks, which I don't know any that are, they will miss the majority of the fraud. So they are detecting some of it, and which is some's better than nothing. And I have used some of these solutions. So they do work to a certain degree, but the challenge is, they're not necessarily stopping the fraud. They're just detecting it. What we were doing, again, starting from the blacklist on, is we would at least shave a quarter of it right away, and then be able to identify, again, a far greater percentage. If you read ad fraud projection reports, they're saying it's between 12 and 18%, not 93. So that tells you right away the difference, I think, in ad fraud detection between TribeOS and some of these other people. And again, it's just not feasible to detect all the fraud unless you're plugged in directly into the website or the network, which we were.
So where is it being reported, that lower number, that 12%?
Yeah, if you just start Googling around and you start looking at the research, those are the projected numbers. And when we were building the tech, that's, we were reading at 12 to 18%. I expected it to be higher, but I never expected it to be as high as what we found. So yeah, I mean, just Google ad fraud research and you'll see those numbers being thrown around.
It's interesting. So tell me a little bit about the team. What does the team look like? How have you guys grown over time?
Yeah, so our team, I was blessed to meet our CTO, Dino Keko. He's probably the most brilliant coder I've ever hired. I've hired a lot of them over the years. And he's a professor at the Birch University in Sarajevo, and he teaches coding. Again, he's the guy with the PhD in machine learning. So our competitive advantage on the team building side, on the tech side, has been that we have been able to cherry pick all the best students from the Birch University and cut our development bill by probably 85 to 90% compared to American talent. And they're phenomenal. They got a great work ethic. So he's the hub on the tech side, and we can scale relatively easy on that side. Again, my background is marketing. So I also played a role of CMO, and then we have some people in operation. So it's a relatively lean team. We have, once we start finding good pockets of publishers to scale to, we'll be able to scale quick and grow the team. But currently we're just trying to keep things lean and mean.
Yeah, that's great. So you said this was, the easiest sale for you to make, in your career. Tell me more about that. Like, was that by design, and you guys targeted a space that you thought was so ripe for the picking, and you're developing something because you had knowledge of the advertising space, you knew what challenges existed, and you were able to bring a solution that was just really needed? How did you get to that point, or did it evolve a little bit over time?
Well, digital marketers always want more traffic. That's how they primarily grow their revenue. There's only two ways really to grow revenue for a digital business. You either grow traffic or increase conversions or increase AOV, right? Average order value. So traffic is usually where they focus on the most. So I think in general, it's easy to sell traffic, but our positioning was so unique with the ad fraud detection and all the tracking and all the tools that are built into the platform that we never, to be honest, I never expected it to be that easy. I thought, hey, this is appealing to me. This is what I'd want. This is what I want. But sometimes you build things you want and the market doesn't want it. But in this case, yeah, advertisers are just excited. I think advertisers, they know that they're being screwed one way or another. It's not just the fraud that they're being screwed with, but so I think in general, there's a high level of distrust in the advertising space, whether it's towards Google or Facebook or whoever. And the idea that there'd be fraud detection was very appealing. So it was a perfect message to market match, I think.
Along the way, Matt, have you had any mentors? And I see that you have a nice group of advisors, on your website.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, some of those people I'm familiar with. I've actually, crossed paths with them at events and things. Yannick Silver, David Bullock, Dean Jackson. There's one other, Jesse Elder. Yeah. So, just curious, like, how do you leverage that network and beyond that, in being a founder of a business, something that's cutting edge, you're staying at the forefront of things. Who do you turn to and lean on?
Yeah, one guy that's not there, who's a very good friend of mine, and for anybody building software, I think it's mandatory to pay attention to him. His YouTube channel is arguably the most valuable YouTube channel in the SaaS space, and his name is Dan Martell.
Yeah.
Dan and I are from the same city of Canada, which is Moncton, New Brunswick. So we've been good friends. He's been a mentor, again, not an advisor for Tribe, but a good friend. And, we stay in touch and talk on a regular basis. And, his wisdom around certain things has just been invaluable. So yeah, you want to leverage people that have very strong genius and expertise around your biggest problems. And you want to spend the most time on that. I think, that's the key. So like, for an example, I don't necessarily need that many marketing mentors, but there's a lot of other things that I need help with. And I try to spend the most time working with mentors that can help me become more aware of my flat spots or help crush my naivety or ignorance as fast as possible. And I think that's the real value of a mentor. It's really getting you from ignorance to aware and saving you years and potentially fatal mistakes as far as the business side goes. So yeah, it's been great. Again, it's been relatively easy to build this board of advisory because they're also excited about the potential and the vision. So
that's great. You mentioned that you guys, I believe you said you have a product that's, tracking and attribution focused. I would love to hear your thoughts on kind of where we're going in that space. I feel like not as much is realized in that space as what it feels like should be at this point in time, like where we're at, heading into 2022. But we'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
On what specifically? Just on attribution?
Just like, yeah, running campaigns, tracking attribution, those types of things.
Yeah. One thing I'll start with is I've realized that I'm in a small minority of advertisers that really, really care about this. That being said, the pool is growing. I think most advertisers, if overall they're profitable, it's good enough for them. They're happy. Just keep advertising. And to me, you're leaving so much money on the table by not accurately seeing which ads are working, which ad groups, which campaigns, and making the proper adjustments, either scaling things that are really working well and potentially 2xing, 5xing, 10xing traffic from those, and eliminating the bad stuff. So it's the way I look at attribution is, and this is how Gold Lantern's built. You want to be able to go from a 30,000 foot view, which is the channels, and then be able to go down to the ground and see every single asset that's working, like the ads, the links, the YouTube videos, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And just going out to the 30,000 foot view and being able to see which channels are working is one of the most valuable insights from a CMO perspective, from a marketing perspective. I'll give you an example. So I'm also the CEO co-founder of Bioptimizers. We're well to the 8 figures a year in revenue, and we sell supplements and different health products. In 2017, we ran one test on a podcast, and I was analyzing the numbers a few months later, and I looked at the return on ad spend, and I was shocked. It was one of the highest performing return on ad spends we had done. So the next year, and we haven't stopped scaling since, we've just been scaling podcast advertising. And again, it's one of those things that without Gold Lantern, without accurate attribution, specifically the attribution over time. So one of the unique functions we've built, which I've never seen anywhere else, is we track the ROI over time. So we see, okay, day 0 or day 1, what's the return on ad spend? 7 days later, 14, 30 days, 2 months, 3 months, and so on and so forth. And if you look at it from an investor perspective, if I'm breaking even, let's say within 30 days, 60 days, unless I'm doubling my money after 4 months, I'm tripling it after 6 months, that's a great investment. And with most ad platforms, all you would see is that you're bleeding, and you would probably stop those campaigns. So again, to me, the attribution of which channel is working, how does it perform over time? And then, of course, you can do all the micro optimization on the ad level and learn. I'll give you some more examples. One of the functions we've built is tagging. So I was just looking at a tagging report last Friday, and we've been tagging emails. So every email might have 4 or 5 different tags. We tag the length of the email, the actual grade level of the email, who wrote the email, the type of email. And we can start seeing very powerful patterns that then we can double down on. For an example, we saw with Beyond the Shadow of a Doubt that if the copy, the text, is between grade 3 and grade 4, that the value percent goes up significantly. We saw which type of email performed best. We saw that shorter emails performed a lot better than medium length or long. So those are the kind of insights that allow you to systematically improve your marketing, where you spend money, and every little micro optimization you can do. And all these things compound. Again, that's how you're able to scale advertising. Sometimes the difference between break even and highly scalable is just those little things. I've experienced that many, many times. So that's why I'm such a fan of attribution and accurate tracking and all of the things we've built into it.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's super interesting stuff. As a marketer, that stuff's all super interesting to me. And to that point, it's all, the compounding effect of, picking up on those different little changes that can be made. That's pretty cool. So that's awesome. So what does the future of the business look like? What's on store? What's in store for the next 12 months, let's say?
Yeah, at this point, again, we're continuing to hunt for good publishers on that front. On the Gold Lantern side, as we're onboarding clients, we always try to build whatever custom reporting that they want. We have all the data in the database. So for us at this point, like I've built a lot of things that I use that I want, but we're super customer centric. And it's always interesting to work with a new client and ask them, well, what's important to you? Like, what do you want? What kind of reports, what columns, what data do you want us to put together? Whether it's a new visual chart or some new columns that we didn't add in the reports. So I think it's just continuing to build the product. I think one key advice, I've got two pieces of advice for everyone listening. One is, commit to the lean startup approach. We overbuilt, and I'm responsible for that. I think I overbuilt things and waited too long to launch. I think if we had launched earlier, I'm talking specifically on the tracking side, and gotten more customer feedback, we'd be much further ahead than we are now. I think I was building things in a vacuum based on what I wanted, and that was a key mistake. So, I'm the master of creep. I'll keep adding more and more features and functionalities, and a lot of that stuff, most people, again, don't care, and that's very problematic. Something I also learned from Dan, and this was like a light bulb moment for me, is people use apps with one single intent almost all the time. So one of the mistakes that I've made is trying to build like 4 or 5 apps and try to put them into one system, like the ultimate all-in-one.
Yeah.
People don't think that way. And as soon as he said that, like I said, it was one of those, of course, moments. If you think about just social media in general, people go to Facebook to connect with people, right? To socialize, to comment, to interact with their friends. People go to Instagram for eye candy. It was an eye candy platform is how it started. Of course, it's evolved a bit, but people don't really go there to connect as much, right? Yeah. People go to Twitter to share thoughts. That's it. They don't go there it's not for eye candy. It's not for socializing. Again, look at TikTok. TikTok's built an entertainment platform. They've built tools and the functionality to make it easy for people to feel entertaining and to appear entertaining. Whether they're entertaining or not is up for debate. But that's how those platforms have scaled. They built with one single intent. They took over that mind share of that purpose, and they've dominated. So Clubhouse did the same thing with interactive audio, and of course, sometimes these features will be ripped off by other platforms, but they rarely take off, right? They rarely take off. Usually, even if Twitter or Instagram or Facebook steal a new type of feature, the player that has solely focused on that will usually remain the king of that space. So I think those are some key things some key mistakes I've made, and if I can help someone avoid those, it'd be great.
It's all really good stuff, and that makes a lot of sense that, really focused intent, kind of a singular focus on each of those. So really great advice there. Matt, I'm going to ask you one last question, but before we do that, tell our viewers where they can learn more about TribeOS and you and other things you might have going on.
Yeah, you can go to tribeos.io. So TRIBEOS.io. You can learn more about our solutions there, and you can reach out to us if you're interested in good, accurate tracking using Gold Lantern or some ad fraud free traffic. Personally, I've got a blog that I haven't updated in a few years, but there's a lot of great content there. It's on mattgallant.tv. I've got an 82-page book on productivity that I just give away for free. So, and then if anybody's interested in optimizing their health, you can search by Optimizers, bioptimizers.com. They're one of the fastest growing health and supplement companies on the planet. So yeah, it's been great. I've been in that space for a long time, and we continue to build, I would say, best-in-class solutions for people that want to optimize their health.
That's awesome. I encourage everyone to go check all that out. All of it sounds very interesting, exciting stuff. Matt, the last question we always like to ask this is, if you were able to go back in time, and I know you've had a couple of businesses now, but let's say your first kind of go at being a founder. If you're able to go sit down, have coffee with yourself right at that beginning, what's the one piece of advice that you would share?
Yeah, I'm pretty clear on that question. I would tell myself, get an integrator. That took me a while. That took me like a decade to figure out.
Yeah.
There's a great book called Rocket Fuel, and there's 2 quizzes you can do that are free. If you just search Rocket Fuel quiz, you'll find them. And the framework of Rocket Fuel is you have people that are visionaries, which are obviously strategists, people that have big picture ideas, and then you've got integrators, coordinators. Just to make things simple, a CEO is a visionary, typically a COO is an integrator. And I struggled and suffered for about a decade trying to do integrator things. And then a friend of mine sat me down and said, like, why are you doing that? Stop doing that. And that was the first light bulb moment, and started hiring integrators. And like at this point, I would not even start a project unless I have an integrator. Like it doesn't make sense. So figuring out who you are, what your strengths are. I'm a big fan of, predictive index, which is a more accurate version of DISC. Colby, Strength Finder is probably the best. Caliper Corp's got a good test. When you do these tests, you get to figure out, okay, these are my natural strengths. This is really who I am. And then also, these are my weaknesses, my flat spots, my shortcomings, whatever you want to call them. And I think as an entrepreneur, as a founder, you need to be hyper aware of where you're weak, hyper aware of where you're naturally strong, and just double down on your strengths and make sure that you've got people in your team that can take care of your weaknesses. And that's the cool thing about business. You can't really do that in your personal life as much in your relationships. But in business, we can always hire people that have strengths where we're weak. And that's the biggest thing. I think it's still like that today as we build teams. Like today, the main thing that we do is just build teams and make sure that the team it's got the right mix of strengths and personalities. And we use these tools to make sure we've got the right blend. Because if you just throw a bunch of integrators in a room, you'll come back and they'll still be planning and nothing will really happen. They'll just be, trying to figure out the perfect plan, so to speak. And if it's just a bunch of visionaries in a room, there'll just be a million big ideas and products and strategies and nobody to build them. So you really need the blend, and just that framework alone is phenomenal. So that'd be my one key advice.
So I take it you guys are an EOS company? You guys run?
Yeah, that was a game changer. Like, that the awareness of it started, and then 5.5 years ago, we started using Traction. Now we're starting to progressively shift to scaling up, because like by Optimizer, we'll do about 25 million this year in revenue. So things have changed. We're like 70 employees. So at this level, we still use a lot of the Traction tools, but we're starting to shift more to scaling up tools. And yeah, I think and EOS was the biggest game changer. So it's that visionary integrator framework, and of course, Traction is fundamental to that. So yeah, Gino Wickman's book is a must read and a must integrate. I'd say from day one, even if you're a one-person show, use the tools. Build a good VTO, and it helps you focus so much more and stay on track as you grow and scale. So
it's awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. We appreciate your time spent here, and it was great having you. And we will be back. We'll be back taking a couple weeks off here. We'll be back last week of November for our last show here of the year. Until then, guys, we will see you next time. Thanks again, Matt. Take care, and it's great having you.
Thanks, Tony.
Awesome.